I'm ready when you guys are ready.
It's almost it's supposed to start at 6:15, so
Okay, mine says 6:15.
20 seconds away.
Okay,
So I'm going by what's on the flag.
okay. So good evening, Select Board. I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:15 PM on February 4th, 2025. So we've got another special night with the Police Department that we're going to start out with after we do the first public comment, which is for someone who wants to talk about anything that's not on the agenda for no more than 3 minutes. We will not respond because it's not on the agenda. Anybody in the audience? Vanessa? No one here? Okay. All right, so let's get to the main attraction here. Chief.
Yes. I'll take it away. Thank you for having us here tonight. We're here to request the board's appointment of Mr. Christopher Byrne to the position of full-time police officer with the Southborough Police Department. We interviewed multiple candidates for this position, and Chris did an outstanding job on his interviews with us. He has successfully passed a background investigation, the physical and the psychological examinations that we require. Mr. Byrne is a Long Meadow resident, is a resident of Long Meadow. He currently works as a full-time police officer for the Long Meadow Police Department. He has been in law enforcement for 7 years now, and he has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Westfield State University. He also served in the United States Marine Corps Reserves as an infantry rifleman from 2013 to 2020. With an honorable discharge. We are excited to have Mr. Byrne as a part of our team. And with your expected appointment tonight, we look forward to having him start his field training with us as a probationary officer as early as tomorrow afternoon, 12 to 8 shift. This addition to our department will bring our full-time sworn officer roster to 18 with 4 more positions to fill. At this time, do you have any questions for myself or Mr. Byrne?
So I'm going to start with Al.
No questions. Welcome to Southborough.
Marguerite.
The same, no questions. Welcome.
Sam.
Ditto, great to have someone who has this experience and up and running very quickly. So that's a real plus. So thank you.
Welcome aboard. Got outstanding credentials and qualifications. So look forward to having you join the force.
So you have an excellent resume. I'm so impressed. Military services, outstanding. Welcome, Jocelyn, also. So I hope you've had a little vacation between your current job and this. So no, you're going right to work. Oh my goodness. So one day, huh? And look where you are. So I don't have any questions either. Your resume is great, and I'm glad that you have accepted this job.
Would you like to take the vote?
So Al, you want to make the motion to appoint Chris?
I move that we appoint Chris Bryan as a probationary police officer in the town of Southborough.
Second.
All in favor? So it's Byrne or it's Byrne. Okay, so Chris Byrne. Okay. All right, so welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we would like to ask the town clerk, Jim Hegarty, to come up and do the swearing in for Chris.
I, Christopher Patrick Byrne Jr., do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties incumbent upon me as a probationary police officer for the town of Southborough, according to the best of my ability and understanding, agreeably to the rules and regulations of the police department, the Constitution and the laws of the United States, and the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and under rules, regulations, and bylaws made under the authority of the select board. So help me God. Yes, sir. Congratulations.
So
Thank you all
Vanessa, you
very
want to get a good picture of him and Jocelyn? Okay. And Chief.
Chief, you missed your chance to bring a uniform tonight and get him on the road this evening, so.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here, as always.
Thank you.
All right. All right, so we're going to take a quick 10-minute break before we start again because the poll hearing is posted for 6:30, correct? Okay, so 10-minute break. Sorry. Yeah. So I'm calling the meeting back to order at 6:31. So we're asking if National Grid is in the audience. If you are, you need to raise your hand so we can move you over for the two poll hearings. No? All right, so we're just gonna move on. Agree?
Yeah.
What were we supposed to do if they're not here? Right?
Yeah, we'll see if someone shows up and you can come back.
I think maybe one other time. So Vanessa, will you keep watching in case they were to come? They're just running late. All right, so we're gonna, why right past this agenda? Yeah. Okay, so we are going to postpone the 7 o'clock discussion, water rates till Matt Abrahams actually gets here. He thinks he's gonna be here closer to 7:30, so we're just gonna keep moving things up until he gets here. All right, so is Brian here? Is Carla here? They just don't, we're way early. Melissa, is she here?
I can text Melissa and see if you want to her.
Okay. Yeah, all right, so we're gonna go into reports until we track everybody down. Okay. So I've actually got quite a few things, and I want to go really slow with the first one because that's really important, which is the NERI project update. So this week is a real crucial week as far as the project and what's going to be brought forth to town meeting on May 10th. On Wednesday, tomorrow, we expect to get the reconciled second cost estimate. We've got two different independent groups that are now working on the cost estimate. One is the original one, which is an outside firm that does most of these cost estimates for schools through the state. And then our OPM is doing the second one. They're going to get together tomorrow with each of their estimates and they're going to reconcile them. So we should have that reconciled estimate Thursday morning. Brian will immediately get that to our bond consulting firm so that they can run the debt service that they are going to project. The OPM is also going to give them a projection of the construction schedule so they can factor that in. So we actually have it, the run up and then the actual permanent bond, what it looks like. On Friday, the NERI Building Committee Finance Subcommittee will be meeting at 2:00 to digest two different things. We're going to digest the new 5-year projection for the town budget that incorporates the NERI debt. So Brian's been working on it this week. He's worked on it with the schools. He's worked on it with Jason Malinowski. He has tried to estimate what he thinks the operating budget should look like for the next 5 years through 6/30/2030, which would include a full year of the debt service when it's permanently financed. Remember, we're supposed to move in. If this project were to be approved, the estimated move-in date would be the fall of 28. Therefore, the permanent bond would be in place for a full year for the year ending 6/30. So that 6/30 estimate would reflect what the bond or the debt service would look like in full for the project. So that's what we're going to see on Friday. The NERI Building Committee Finance Subcommittee will then present their discussion and their recommendations to the full committee the following Monday. Now, I've posted a meeting for the full select board for both of these meetings in case you want to come and we've got a quorum. So if you want to come, that's fine. It's all Zoom. So if you want to chime in, please do, but it will all be fine. You can discuss it because it's posted. Now, we've got a backup plan, and this is important too. This is a lot of work to be done real quick in the next couple of days. So if something goes wrong with the schedule, then we've got a backup date for the NERI Building Committee Finance Subcommittee to meet on Monday at 1:00. So that allows a full committee to still meet that night at 7:00. So that's our plans. Once that gets done, the NERI Building Committee will vote on the numbers that we agree that this is what we are going to bring to town meeting. We've got to get that information to the MSBA by the 15th of February. They need to have that. They need to know that we support the budget. They then, on the 25th, they need to get the schematic design from the architects. And then at that point, everything that has to go into the MSBA is there. They then vote on the project itself on April 30th, and that's when we know what our grant would be based on the cost estimates that have been submitted and the schematic design that's been submitted. So we hear that on April 30th to get ready for the special town meeting on May 10th. Between, call it February 25th and the end of March, the new rebuilding committee will come back in front of the select board and advisory to basically talk about all of these numbers. So we'll have another chance as a full committee, or full board, to hear everything that's been done since you last heard from the full committee on December 17th. Okay, so that's a mouthful. Anybody have any questions about the schedule? I mean, this is really important. We keep up with this so that you really are up to date on the numbers and know where we are. So we're going to know a lot more in 48 hours as far as what the cost is. What's happened since the last estimate is they've decided to use a geothermal system to provide the HVAC, and that's $12 million. I believe there were 6 in the first estimate, so that's going to bring it up for sure. That is the type of project that if the Inflation Reduction Act were still in place and honored, which is in question right now, then we would get a significant rebate from that in a couple of years once the system was placed in service. But it's pretty, it's a little bit shaky right now with what's going on. So there will be no ability to assume that in these numbers. We'll just have to assume we're going to pay for it out of pocket. So that's a big thing as far as what's going on there. So any questions about the schedule?
Yeah, I know Brian is scribbling furiously,
Yes.
but I think we need to see projections out at least 10 years and closer to 20, give people, visibility about our debt capacity. And because, there are a myriad of other wants in town, and we need to figure out, if we're going to have debt capacity to meet some, any, or none of those. So I think we need to carry that analysis out at least 15 to 20 years.
All right, you start getting too far out, Al, it's kind of meaningless. John Butler and I kind of, so I don't want to go 30. I would go 10 without much push. I think you go much beyond that, you really are just assuming so much stuff. It doesn't necessarily make it a useful exercise, but we can try. If you want that done, we can try.
I'm happy to work with the cast of characters to do that. But, what I'm concerned about is, we have in our 10-year horizon, at least emerging other substantial expenses that may not show up in 5 years, but definitely will show up in 10, things like roofs, things like HVAC systems, and, possibly a municipal wastewater system. And all of those are claims on our debt service capacity. So I think and frankly, people have been asking for the big picture. And, even if we don't have precision, we should be able to say, these are the things that are on the horizon, and this is what the horizon looks like. And that we at least, are thinking about them in terms of our ability to support those things. I mean, we're not going to measure it down to the penny. We're not probably going to measure it down to the million, but
We won't be precise, but okay, I hear
Yeah.
you. So we'll talk more
Yeah.
about truly have, but this week it's going to be 5 years because that's what we can do.
understand.
And
This
we
is-
can, we have time to go further after that,
Yeah.
but we've got to get this information to the MSBA to keep that process going.
people are asking for the big picture, and I think that's an important part of our job.
All right, we are big picture, aren't we? Okay. Thursday at 2:00, we've got a very important meeting in this room with the company that's bought 2 of the buildings on the EMC Dell properties. They closed now on 2, 32 Coslin, which we already knew about, and then they closed the 29th on 21, which is a building that's partly in Westboro, partly in Southboro, where we had our town meeting for Algonquin years ago. The company is Atlantic Management. They have done really big, nice projects in surrounding towns around us. They wanted this meeting. So Al is going to go, I'm going to go, Mark's going to be there, Chris Lund's going to be there, Mimi Luttrell is going to be there, Paul Sabelli is going to be there. So we're going to sit there and talk about what they want to do, what they think they can do. We're going to talk about what's left to buy for EMC Dell. So I'm hoping that that's going to be a mutually beneficial meeting. So we'll see. We'll report back after the meeting. You may recall at the last meeting, we forwarded 2 articles to the planning board for them to be able to open the hearings for annual town meeting, right? And there was a 3rd one that wasn't ready. So we couldn't forward it because there was nothing to forward. So I went to the planning board meeting on Monday, and I actually was there for the whole meeting. I was there for nothing to do with our business. I had a business interest to be there for, and my item was last on the agenda. So I actually was there for the whole meeting, and I'm glad I was. It was a really good meeting. They got a lot done. But they've got a really, really heavy schedule, and a lot of it, it's not, they've got projects that keep being pushed by the developers or by whoever sponsors the project. So they had a good discussion about whether they could get the 3rd article done, which is expanding the uses in the industrial park zone. And they all concluded, and I actually agreed with them, that they didn't have time to get it done. So they want to put that forward at the special town meeting that we think we're going to have in the fall. The good news is they all seem to support it, from what I could tell. They didn't officially vote, obviously, but they do seem to want to get it done. And we're talking very positively about that piece of it. They just didn't think they had the time to do it right with everything else they've got to get done before town meeting. They still have a lot of questions on the ADU, a whole lot of questions, which they're going to try to get addressed, I think, at the next meeting with Jay Tellerman being there. They've got these projects that are still in the plate, and they've got a lot of them. They're good projects. It's 2 Main Street, it's Meadow Lane. So they do truly have a lot going on. So I supported that. I got up and said, I support moving this to the special town meeting. So I hope that everybody here is okay with that. Okay. All right. CPC, Community Preservation Committee. So this is a little complicated, so stay with me. 9 members per the bylaw. 7 members are from other committees. 2 are at-large members appointed by the select board. We used to appoint all 9, but because of the change with last year's special town meeting, the committees appoint theirs directly, so we don't do that anymore, but we do still appoint the 2 at-large members directly. So last meeting, we appointed Ellen Maria to the Affordable House Trust to fill that out. So it's 5 members now. So it's all done. It's all filled. Then Al, correct me if I'm wrong, at the most recent Affordable House Trust meeting, they appointed Ellen as their rep to CPC. And we also, last meeting, decided to replace SHOPC with Affordable House Trust. I should have said that first. So we replaced Affordable House Trust as one of the 7 appointing committees to CPC, replaced SHOPC. And now Ellen is the rep on Affordable House, from the Affordable House Trust to CPC. So she's resigned her at-large seat on CPC. So now there is I don't know who's got the other seat, but I think there's only one. So there's at least one.
Doug. Can't remember.
No, because Doug was SHOPC. Doug was SHOPC. So Vanessa, can you check real quick, go to the town website and see if CPC has a vacant at-large seat besides the one we're talking about? We know we've got one now because of Ellen. So there is now at least one vacant at-large seat. So we now need to advertise for that and see if there's any applicants for that.
Brett.
And hopefully
Brett Peters.
Brett is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got one then. That's true. So I forgot that he was not open space. At the meeting on the 25th, we hope we'll have some applications for that position. And then if we do, we can hopefully appoint that position on the 25th. Okay. So the next one is one that Vanessa always likes us to keep mentioning because we really still have way too many vacancies on committees. So we're going to talk about 3 tonight besides CPC. So EDC, poor EDC still has 2 out of its 5 totally vacant. So we need to try to find people who've got the type of background that would benefit that committee. Rec Commission has 1. They've got quite a few things going on. They always do, but they've got to deal with Choate Field. So they need to try to fill that one out. So we need to try to find some people interested in rec type things. And then CIPC is down one too. So they lowered the committee from 7 to 5, but they still are down one. So I've got 4, so they're looking for 1. So those are 3 very important committees that need to hopefully get more people in them, new people. Okay, that's it for me. Is there any other members' reports? I don't think so, right? No? Mark?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick items. The first one, I sent this out to the board earlier today, received our first citizen petition for the annual town meeting. The petition is from Mr. Carl Geyer, and I won't read it, but it's essentially seeking to appropriate funds for independent counsel to review the activities up at Breakneck Hill Conservation Property. So that is something that will be on the warrant. The town clerk has certified the signatures, and there are enough to include it on the warrant.
So you need to send that one to Melissa Danza and Conservation Commission, make sure they see it.
Yes.
Okay.
The only other thing that I want to just update the board, so again, we continue to meet on the rec, the regional dispatch. We meet every Wednesday for about 2 hours in the morning. The board of directors meets at 9:30 in Westboro, and then the operations committee meets right after. So the operations committee is really focusing on a lot of the technology and a lot of the safety components of the building. The draft lease for the property is just about ready for the board to review. The executive director advertisement should be going out this week. And that needs to be a position under the town of Westboro, because Westboro is the grant recipient at this point. We do have verbal confirmation from the state that they will allocate the funding so we can hire the executive director now. And we're just waiting for written confirmation for that, but we are going to proceed with the process to hire the executive director. So that's all I have at this point.
And the grant, it's due the first week in March,
Yes,
and it's under control.
it is under control.
Mark, who owns that building?
Town of Westboro.
So the rec is going to lease it from the town of
Lease it from the
Westboro.
Lease
town.
it from the
Got it.
town,
Okay.
right? So so the town has an interest, the town has to do the lease. The town also has to be part of paying the lease, paying the payments back. So obviously, I believe that is going to be very reasonable.
We're going to be through this meeting before anybody gets here. Okay, let's go on to the consent agenda. Have we seen anybody come in, Vanessa? No National Grid? No Melissa?
No, Carla is here.
Carla and
Brian was here.
Carla is here?
Carla is. here.
Carla's enough. Brian doesn't need to be here for the, this is a simple report, so she can do the report.
Okay.
All right, so let's go to item 3E, which is the quarterly financial update from Carla.
National Grid is not here. National Grid. National Grid is not.
They haven't showed yet, so we don't know what's happened to them. Is that why you're here?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're waiting. They didn't call. They didn't say they weren't coming, so I'm sorry. We're going to, they didn't say they weren't coming. They're supposed, the hearings advertised are supposed to be here, so we have heard nothing. So we're watching to see if they appear.
So Brian is here. We'll bring Carla. over.
Okay.
Well,
Are you here for-
On Parkerville Road, 182?
You're here for the hearing too, the poll hearing?
Yes, yep. Yeah, we were told to be here at 6:30.
No, it's advertised at 6:30. They just haven't shown. National Grid's not here.
Okay, can you tell us anything about what's proposed?
It's hard to do that without National Grid being here. They're the ones that explain all this, and then we ask questions. So I don't think we should take the
Okay,
lead
yeah,
on
I
trying to
see that.
explain something.
It's in the packet online that's posted, but I can give you mine if you want to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
So we've called them to see where they are. So there's a message that's
One's
been
Pine
left.
Hill.
So I'd say hang in here for a few more minutes. This is the first time we can remember they haven't shown for a poll hearing. So let's give them, it's only 10 till 7. Let's give them a few more minutes and see what happens. I hate that you came for nothing. So just, if you can, hang in there for a few more minutes and we'll we'll keep watching to see if they come.
Would be rescheduled. now?
Yeah, it'll be rescheduled.
They're Parkerville.
Yeah.
Are you both here for Parkerville?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh. Is it on the back?
Oh, I think I have, yeah. Yeah, so they've got.
Brian's already over.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to go on to the Q4 report with Brian Ballantyne, our treasurer, and Carla McAuliffe, our town accountant. Brian, Carla, which one wants to take the lead?
It doesn't matter since I'm on video. Can you hear me, first of all?
We can hear you.
Okay, because I've been having an issue with this laptop. I can certainly start. I don't know if you want me to share my screen real quick. This should be fast, but
Yeah, please do. We need something to fill our time here.
okay.
Share it all you want to.
Okay. There you go. There's little trees. Let's see. Like I said, this is pretty positive news for the most part. So I think, budgetary wise, we're probably hearing some cautionary tales, but this is good news, at least for FY25 so far. The reporting period obviously is July through December. I won't read it verbatim, but our general fund revenues are certainly running very good again, $591,000. Be aware, we've said this before, one-time fees or revenues are about 200 of that, so that's about a third. So that, you just have to be cautious that may not be around next year. Great news on motor vehicle excise, investment income permits. We did get commitment 1 for the new year, which is our huge excise tax. So on or about next Saturday, you're all going to get your excise tax bills for the year. So that is up a bit from last year too, which is really good news. It continues to keep us amazed.
Do you know what the percent increase is year over year for the first one?
It would be probably about 7 or 8%, somewhere around there.
There's a lot of people are buying cars. Good.
Yeah, and I think it's because of the price of vehicles that we all know they're more expensive. So excise is based on value. So that has to be part of it. But anyways, good news there. I know you're talking about water rates shortly, and at least through this year, the water revenues are $500,000 higher than last year. So good news. I didn't get a chance to parse that out in detail, whether it's from usage or water rates. But I have a feeling it's probably a mixed reason for that. Carla, I can go through this or you can go through it. It's up to you. Well,
It's up to you, however you want to work it.
well, I'm rolling along, so I'll let you do the last two.
Okay.
Everything's looking good for this year for the most part. I think you're going to see this is small stuff. $20 is pretty minor, de minimis actually. Building and recreation may have some slight adjustments. The building one, I know there's not a price listed there, but it shouldn't be more than a few $1,000s. You can see the potential issues as of now. Fires over time, they've had a lot of IODs in the department and a lot of staffing issues there through December. Obviously DPW,
Probably won't be only.
again, vacancies, Board of Health, staff changes, benefits. You may recall we did the retiree renewal and it was higher than we anticipated. So we may be able to absorb that. It's too early for me to know. I'm hoping we can. But that was like a $60,000 difference. So we're going to watch that too. But to date, no reserve transfer funds. So this is good news too. I'll keep rolling if you want, Carla. ARPA is just about, you can see 3 million and 2.2 of that is spent, which is a little over 2/3. Carla did a great job at getting on departments for encumbering their money and getting their projects rolling and everything. So I find this an interesting point. The last point actually she put on there was, 52 projects and 38 have been completed. So we still have 14 in process, but that's a nice little tidbit to know. Unfortunately, that has run out, and I think for fiscal 26, the budget, we'll see the capital. That's part of the reason some of the capital is going to be going up for that year, or at least what's requested. FEMA update. Carla loves this again. I was speaking for her, but so you can see they filed the final claim. It's working its way through the approval. $670,000 we got back from that. Great news. There is Carla, you can jump in and correct me, but there's one final claim left. And it's interestingly enough and sadly enough being held up because of the federal government's pause on grant reimbursements. So personally, I think that'll be resolved and go through eventually. Politically, I'm not sure how you can back up not, reimbursing FEMA claims, but we'll see. It just may be delayed. I think the amount is, again, 30,000, 35,000.
31,000. Yeah.
31,000.
And we did file the, the forms to get reimbursed, and we mailed them in. They just need to sign and put the final stamp on it. So we're dangerously close with that. Here's hoping.
Dangerously close.
Hey,
Yeah.
Brian, let's also make clear, the ARPA money is in the bank. So that's not in danger of anything going on in Washington being not given to us. We have that money. So it's only
Right.
the 31,000 that's at risk here.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yep.
Thankfully, we got it at the bank. You're right. I'll finish up by some of the high level stuff. Unfortunately, the audit is delayed again, and I can't, we can't blame the auditor. It's delays downstream from him, or upstream, maybe I should say, where he relies on, the audits have become so complex. He relies on other audits and other sources of information to finish the financials. And it's just becoming more and more and more common for these delays. So we're watching when he can finish and when he can come in and give that good presentation along with possibly the OPEB auditor. Hoping it's not long, but we're staying on it. Just large products. I know you just talked about NERI, and along with, the combination with Finn and how that's going to work. And unfortunately, library is no longer on the board to, be a project for right now. So the last couple comments, the next debt, it will be in the spring. I'll be talking about that because we do have a couple of projects, specifically the CPC townhouse and the NERI study, to kind of finish and permanently finance what we need to do. I'm not sure how that's going to work quite yet. It's a little early, but in the spring, I'll be talking about that with the board. So again, looking forward to Saturday. Departmental budgets are all in, and we've had slight adjustments at the last minute. It's not unusual, but nothing big. And I anticipate on Saturday, maybe, post the departmental meetings, we can set our goal as to what we want to see that final budget be, or at least possibly identify a tax rate increase that we're comfortable with or something like that. So I think the departmental, I'm sorry, I think the FY26 budget will probably get into fuller swing after this meeting on Saturday. And as a reminder, all the residents can see the annual town meeting, special town meeting, and town election are not very far away, April, May, and the middle of May. So they're all coming up, and hopefully we get good turnout.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Carla.
Hey, thanks.
And I just want to reiterate something that Brian said. Carla was tenacious. There's probably other adjectives to make sure that the ARPA money got spent. Some departments might say hounded them to make sure that it got done. Bill kind of is nodding his head, Carla, just so you know. But she got it done. So we spent every penny of what we were allocated, which I think is great. So, and I think we put it to pretty good use too, overall. Yeah, 52 projects. I agree.
Perhaps the
Thank
board should
you.
give a huzzah to Carla.
What's that?
Board should give a huzzah to Carla.
Absolutely.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Thanks.
Seriously, Carla, I know how much you did to make sure that this got spent the way it should be spent and documented the way it should be.
That was a big deal too. I mean, $3 million or so that we otherwise wouldn't have had, and a lot of good things got done as a result of it. So it's a great thing to have done.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
One thing too, on your report, we talk about CPC not closing out projects timely, which is a true statement. We have asked them to do it. We've asked the chair to do it. We keep being promised we're going to do it, and it just doesn't seem to happen. We've also been told that it's fairly small amounts of money, but this one's big. So we should definitely make sure that the 200K that's going to be left over from the townhouse project does get closed out. I mean, that's us. We should be able to do it.
Yeah, I've had conversations with Freddie about that, so she is aware of it. She actually expects it, so I think we're gonna be good on that one.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you, guys. So Brian, we'll see you a lot this week. Okay,
you.
now we do think that National Grid is here. Can National Grid raise your hand if John is from National Grid? No,
No hand up.
he's not there anymore? So he must not be in National Grid. Okay, so we've talked to the people who've come for the hearing and explained that we're going to postpone the hearings until February 25th, that they'll be at 6:30 again, and that we will triple check with National Grid to make sure they're going to be here. So we're very sorry that you've come out on cold winter night to do this. Your hearing will be first for Parkerville Road. So you should be able to only be here for 15 minutes or so and go back home. Okay,
Thank you.
all right, so thank you for coming.
I won't pay my bill this month.
There you go.
In protest.
There you go. So Bill, we still think Matt's gonna be here at 7:30, correct? Okay. All right, so we're gonna go on to the consent agenda, get that done. Then we'll talk about the cemetery commission, and then by then we'll take another break and wait for 7:30, right? Because I don't think that's gonna get us to 7:30. All right. Okay, consent agenda. We've got A, B, C, and D. Minutes, anybody want to hold those?
A, yep.
Okay, anybody want to hold the, all the second one is, they just didn't, we've already approved this. They just didn't get sworn in time, so it's back on to approve again. So we've already approved this once. Everybody okay with B?
Yep.
Okay, the two alternate building inspectors. Mhm.
Yeah.
So we've got those. If you didn't read them, we can always hold them, but yes, we do have them. It's one page. They're easy to read. Then we've got a request to approve a revised job description for the IT manager. And Vanessa, I'm going to pull that one so Vanessa can kind of explain what's happened here and where we are in the process. So we're going to go first here, and then personnel board will take it from us. Okay, so let's do the minutes first. Sam, what have you got for minutes?
On line 28, they talk about bi-monthly reporting. Should be biannual. I'm sorry, should be
It's
bi-monthly.
bi-monthly, not biannual, right?
Should be bi-monthly,
Okay.
not biannual. Yeah,
Okay,
biannual is.
okay, bi-monthly instead of biannual, all right?
And then line 111, I would rephrase that to say maintain a 10% cap on total debt service. It's a cap, not a goal.
Yeah, I worked, okay, so you want to say what exactly?
Maintain a 10% cap on total debt service. So that's the limit.
Okay, tell her exactly what you want to say. So he stated the working group recommends that the town maintain,
A 10% cap on total debt
So-
service.
okay, so a 10% cap on total debt service.
Right.
Right,
yeah.
so I agree, that sounds better.
And it's
Okay.
not to shoot for 10%.
Right, we don't want,
If we can avoid
Right.
it. And line 156, hold item C.
so Ms. Cook moved to hold consent agenda item C.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
And line 194, 195, it's the Affordable Housing Trust. not the trust fund. Affordable Housing Trust Committee, not the trust fund committee.
And it's so hard to get people to say that, right? Because we said
Yeah.
fund for so long,
Yep.
right? Okay, so I agree. So
That's-
Bridget, Affordable Housing Trust, you can leave off the fund.
Yep.
Okay,
That's it for me.
all right. I only had one at first and I weren't going to do it because it was so embarrassing, but I've got one more substance. So I will do my one silly one. So 33, it should be singular purpose, right, Marguerite? Funds available for the purpose of supporting affordable housing. 33, the board discussed community CPA funds available for the purpose of supporting affordable housing.
Yeah, I could go either way. Yeah, purpose is better.
Okay, all right, the one that I didn't understand. So take a look at 131. First of all, is there actually a tree warden act? Okay. I didn't think so. So we just need to fix this. The TA report, so they executed the special act. Okay, so I just want to change execution of special act. And then I guess she's trying to add the actual site for the law when she says add MGL.
Oh, yeah, that's her note to herself.
So she can just delete that. So Bridget, all you gotta do is say execution of
Special act.
special act by Governor Healy and you're fine.
Yep.
Everybody agree?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from January 25th, 21st as amended.
Second?
All in favor? Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda item B.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, Vanessa, you want to talk to us about C, so we're pulling C, which is revision of the job description for the IT manager. Yes.
So this is an update to Jay Montijo's job description, which hasn't been edited, I don't think, for quite some time now. It certainly hasn't been touched since after the pandemic, which of course we've now, added a whole layer of hybrid meetings to that the IT department supports. It also had not been updated since we added the position that Hassan holds in the department. So it's now worded to include, performance reviews and supervisory duties and things of that nature. I also wanted to point out that we strengthened some language in the area of cybersecurity and mitigating risk. And certainly, from the work Jay and Hassan have done over in the public safety complex, making that room, really high tech and able to support all the AV needs we're using for many of our boards and committees over there. So those are generally the amendments we're asking the board to agree to in this job description. As you know, the SAP also requires that the personnel board approve edits to all the non-union job descriptions. So that will be on their agenda. They'll be meeting next Monday morning. But as the appointing authority, we wanted to bring this to you first.
And then it'll be on the warrant for April 7th.
Right. Well, the job description doesn't go to town meeting, but if there were any change in grade or pay, that would be an amendment to the SAP.
Okay, but it's not, so it won't go to town meeting.
Correct. It's not as a separate item. I did also want to point out that we are modifying the title. Right now, it's IT manager in the SAP. So that's the piece that you might see as an amendment to the SAP at town meeting.
So I thought that anytime you changed anything to SAP, it went to town meeting. That's not true?
No, if it's just a modification of a job description, that would not require any town meeting action. A title would, because that's under section 20, which is our classification of all our non-union positions, a title or a
We are
grade.
changing a title.
Yes, so I misspoke because it would show up as a track changes in section 20 in the town meeting warrant.
Okay, so it will go to town meeting
Yes.
if personnel.
Yes, I was thinking I thought you were asking about grade, so that's my fault. Title, yes.
All right, so if we approve and personnel board approves, then it will go to town meeting, but only to approve the change in title, nothing else?
Correct, correct. Because job descriptions don't go in the warrant, only the title would.
Well, it's a good thing that we really bogged down town meeting.
Right, right.
All right, so everybody clear into what we're doing tonight, which is approving or not the proposed changes to Jay Montijo's job.
Correct.
Entitled.
Al?
No questions.
Marguerite?
I just had a few little scrivener's changes, but we already talked about that.
Yes.
So who's we?
Vanessa.
And so you're gonna make those?
Yes, they're just sort of formatting and grammatical
That's all
corrections.
they are?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Stan?
I'm okay.
Either this is what Jay wants, and he certainly is a director. Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the proposed revised job description for the Director of Information and Technology, and also improve the title for that department.
Second.
All in favor? All right.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along pretty fast here. Okay, so Bill, we have nothing left to discuss but the Cemetery Commission before we get to the water rates.
About executive session minutes.
Oh, sorry. One more thing, Bill. So Andrew, are you okay if we approve these? We can wait.
There's one thing that I need to change in it. I actually
All right,
drafted.
so let's just table this until the 25th. So Andrew's got a chance to read them. This was basically
I'm
your,
wondering whether we, there's a chance we could deal with it in the executive session.
It's not listed on the.
Yeah, okay, all right. So we'll just move it to the next.
okay, so we'll do it on the 25th.
Sure.
Okay, all right. In the meantime, why don't you get corrected what you
Okay.
think should be corrected with
I
Mark?
missed the times on it, so it's no big deal.
All right, so get that,
I
that's
started
easy.
and
All
stopped.
right, so get that corrected and resubmit them. Okay, Bill, talk slow.
Matt's on track for 7:30, so. Yes.
Okay, so we started this discussion at last meeting. Bill was not here, so we wanted to give Bill a chance to basically talk about the pros and cons of adding a cemetery commission to the town of Southborough, which we used to have before we had the combination of the DPW in 1991. We had a separate cemetery commission, which Bill and our audience here was actually on.
Bob. Yeah.
Bob, sorry, Bob. Anyway,
Sure. I'll
Okay.
give you an overview. So thank you. I apologize for missing out on the last meeting. I held out as long as I could. But the request is really coming from a number of different areas that I've got going on in my thought process. Ideally, we would have a committee that is focused on cemetery issues, whether they be sales, utilization of the trust fund or the perpetual care account, identifying issues. We have a pretty significant issue with one of the retaining walls on the site. Looking at expansion options, there certainly is not a lack of work that needs to be done. And, you know, people that have a vested interest in cemetery operations, like we had at the last meeting, would be ideal candidates for serving on this commission. So I wanted to elaborate a little. In my memo, I touched on some issues. While these meetings with the Cemetery Commission would be open to the public and they'd be public meetings and they'd have minutes and whatnot, there is a level of discretion that comes with a smaller committee than the select board. Many of the issues that surround cemeteries, it's sometimes whether it's a waiver request, we have rules and regulations. Sometimes we get requests for waivers. Sometimes we have special considerations that are brought forward. And these are sensitive topics. So I thought with a smaller committee, it might be a little better served to have that level of discretion increased. Many of the viewers of the select board meetings don't really have a vested interest in the cemetery operations. So, the thought process is maybe, if someone has an interest, they're certainly welcome to come to the meetings that we would have and participate, or even better, be on the board. So my thought process really is in streamlining and having a specialized focus on cemetery operations. And that's why I floated the idea of coming to the board and seeing if we could relieve the board of that duty. I know Andrew mentioned at the last meeting that, the committee, the board's opposed to forming more committees. I do understand that. when in reality, the select board is the committee. Okay, so the committee exists. It's just a matter of deferring that control and operation to a different group of people. That's all. So
Bill, the commission would cover not only the rural cemetery, but old burial ground also issues. I know there's nothing new going to happen there, but it certainly needs to be maintained. And, you know, there's work that needs to be done right now to probably maintain it better than we have. So would it cover both?
the scope could include all cemeteries in town, or the select board could decide, hey, we just want it to be rural cemetery. It's really open-ended, however you'd like to have it executed.
Okay, so I just going to open this up. I keep going back and forth. Yes, the select board, we were told 2 years ago by, we had hired an outside consultant to help us with our goals for that year. And he just also made a point that a town this size, we've got too many committees. It was his opinion. He was a former town manager. He'd been in the municipal board for a long time. So, you know, we listened to him. So since then, we've been trying to streamline committees. We've gotten maybe a few I'm taking care of, not a lot, and we still have a lot of vacancies on committees. They seem not to be moving in the right direction. So that's one, you know, reason not to do it. But I hear you. We definitely. So you believe in 10 years we're going to need new land for more space, correct?
I think that's on track with what we've seen for the rate of sales and occupancy and the demand based on the current demand. Yes.
Okay, so that's going to be dealt with. All right, so Al?
Well, I looked at cemetery usage, and I think I agree. 10 years is about the right number, but what that means is in the next few years, we got to have a plan. I guess the question I have is, we have also sort of had this idea of a revised Public Works Advisory Committee of some sort. Could we combine both functions?
The board can do what they desire to do. My recommendation is let's keep it focused. My preference is to have a committee that's specialized in certain tasks. You have a person here that's interested in serving perhaps, and that person may have a special interest in cemetery operations. If you broaden that scope to include roads and water and other issues, transfer station or whatever the operation is, they may lose interest because now it's only a minor portion of the issue. So I think from my perspective, you get a group of people that know cemeteries, they know the statutes with cemeteries, they, you know, focus on that issue. It's going to be a lot of work just for that. It's going to be a heavy lift.
How many people would you think you'd want on a commission?
I would think 3 would be adequate. 5 if
That's-
for some reason you think
That's
there's
the
a
number
need.
that came to my mind if we did something along these lines, 3. Well, I'd certainly like to look and see if there's a committee we could do without and as keep our score even at least, but I'll take a hard look at it. All right.
Thank you.
I looked at around at a lot of surrounding towns when this first came up. And some of there's a cemetery commission in virtually every single one of them. Some are elected, some are appointed. Do you have a thought about?
Well, I think the statute allows either. Okay, so, you know, it's really the board's discretion. I would think from a selfish perspective, appointments might be a little more focused on who gets in there with certain skill sets.
So select board appointed? Or
Yes.
You would?
The
bring
statute
somebody
says
forward?
select board.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
And my other question is, if we're going to have full build out in terms of our cemetery capacity in 10 years, how long do we have before we should start looking at land so that we don't come up against it? Because the state requires that we have a cemetery. You have, it's a law, right? So how many years would you feel comfortable with waiting before you started to find land?
Well, there's a few things that go into that. It's not an easy thing to answer. We're looking at the rate of sales of plots versus, the niches in the wall. There's certain little pockets of areas we might, buy some time if we get a little creative in how we execute those, locations. But it takes planning, okay? And I think you could stretch that out a few years, depending on how you market and, plan for these things. But I think it would be a good idea to start letting this rise to the surface and starting to think hard about what the next step is. Nothing is readily apparent to me at that location. We may need to expand further, but that's something we'd work on with whatever group is established.
So would you say we should start now or start in 5 years or?
I think it would be prudent to start now. You don't know what kind of hurdles you might encounter. Somebody doesn't want to sell, maybe it takes negotiating time to get more MDC land. There's options out there that would have to be looked at.
Okay. And is it a possibility to use, to have one rural cemetery and then find another place somewhere else in town? To me, that's not quite ideal, but I don't know if you could expand what you've got there now.
It's not efficient because ideally, it'd all be at one location, but we could make it work at a different location too.
Right.
It's not fatal.
I guess I'm just asking questions that a committee would have to.
Right.
deal with. So thank you.
Right.
Sam?
Yeah, I guess I looked at at Mass General Law. It looks to me there are two ways to do this, two different statutes. One is the select board could appoint a committee. The other, we could actually have a new elected committee there. I lean toward the appointments for the reasons that you suggest here. It's unclear to me exactly what the committee would do in the sense of maintenance. For example, I've looked at other towns' charges for cemetery commissions, and it seems to me it is potentially confusing if they get too far into the maintenance world, which DPW has capacity to maintain a variety of things. I wouldn't think that it would be perfect to have the commission responsible to hire people for maintenance there, and DPW has crews that do maintenance, et cetera. So how do you see that?
Well, first of all, it would allow an avenue for people to raise issues or concerns with other than DPW. Not that we wouldn't be attentive and listen. With regard to maintenance, we do handle the site fairly well. I'm fairly proud with how the crew handles the site, and we have a subcontractor that does do a lot of the mowing. There's certain things that, we could improve, as you might expect, but the maintenance is pretty well under control. That's routine maintenance when I think about this. There are other things that have gone on for a period of time that really could take a little TLC and look at. There's some headstones that have been knocked over for years.
Yep.
There are some, tree issues that need to be tended to. That I know Marguerite's mentioned to me recently about a, what's it called? The rust at the door on the bottom.
A crypt.
The crypt. And, I'm working with Kevin Miller on getting the roofing on the tower, the water tower done. So, there's a wide breadth of things. We do the routine stuff fairly well. The other stuff takes a little time and effort and focus and prioritizing those things. The retaining wall is a great example. Reviewing the VHB report on that, 200,000, I think, is very inadequate to do the project. So I think we need to drill down a little more on that.
I guess I'm concerned about too many cooks in the kitchen. on this in the sense, it seems to me DPW's function is the sort of the on-the-ground operations
Yeah.
day to day, and I would be concerned about a cemetery commission that was charged with, hiring people and managing that kind of stuff.
I don't envision that, yeah.
More policy kinds of things. Also, to Marguerite's point, I mean, it seems to me that dealing with additional space is important to start as soon as possible, because if we, by some miracle we're able to figure it out tomorrow, that's great, we're set then. But the chances are far greater that we're going to have trouble finding.
That's right.
property. And so the sooner we start with that, the better off we are. I share some of Mr. Dennington's concerns about creating additional committees here. On the other hand, I think this is specialized enough that it could be helpful, and it could be, again, as you suggest, a way to take some of the pressure off of both you and us here. What would you see as an avenue for appeal if somebody made a request to a new cemetery commission for something and they said no? Where does the citizen go next?
I would think that they would be the decision maker in that case. So, I would work with the commission and the individual in scoping and defining the issue at hand, and give the committee enough information to make an educated decision.
I think ultimately, I think you need an appeal route for everything. I mean, typically we've got the courts, for example, which is
Right.
a little extreme. I'd be concerned about sending appeals back to the select board. I'm not in favor of that.
I don't envision that.
Question for town council in terms of that.
Yeah, it would.
So,
That's fair.
okay, I guess, I lean in favor of doing this. I'm not eager, but I defer to your judgment on this. I think we want to support you. If you think this is a good idea, I'm prepared to support it.
Mhm.
Andrew.
Sure. I've been one of the most opposed to creating any new committees for a variety of different reasons. I'm also in the position, like Sam, I want to support you if you think there's a way that we can help you. I don't feel like there's a great pressure on the select board of the cemetery things that we've handled. They're on the except for one highly charged thing. The rest of them have all just been consent agenda things. So we haven't really been presented anything where I feel like there'd be a benefit to the select board. There'd be fewer things we have to deal with on an agenda by creating a commission like this. But just hearing, the concerns you have, it seems like a lot of them have to do with operations, right? And I think that if we did this, I would want to see just focus just on the rural cemetery. I definitely think that it should be just an appointed committee rather than elected committee. The idea of having already on the ballot where there's so many different, there's already quite a few boards where, voters come in, they have no idea who any of the people are. This would be another one of those. I think sounds like there's no support for making this an elected body. No more than 3 people. I would love to find a way to not have to do this through a special legislation to the legislature. It can take 2 years to create, a year, 2 years to do something like this.
Yep.
Is there a way that you can just do this as kind of like an ad hoc advisory committee? And I also like the idea of if it's not an ad hoc committee, having some type of a sunset provision. I know we had an argument about this on another proposed committee a year or 2 ago, and I think this would absolutely be the candidate for it, where by that I mean, when you create it, it's going to be created for X number of years, with the idea that if proves to be a functioning good board or commission, the town meeting reauthorizes it for X number of years. But if it proves to be not helpful, then it just goes away, right? And this is just to control the gradual growth of committees, commissions, more bureaucracy in the town. So those are the things that, comments I have on it. I mean, I don't think to really flesh this out, you'd really need to start drafting, like really get into the
Yeah,
details.
what's the
What-
charge and so forth, yeah.
Yeah. I am looking, I do see some other towns have things like this. So, those are my thoughts on this. We talked a little bit about would this have a budget? Sounds like if it did have a budget, it would be like really kind of minimal budget, kind of like some of our other boards and committees have. I just think we have to be careful about creating too many commissions that have too little accountability and people that are off have their own kind of agendas or off on their own on some of these low profile committees.
So, there's another way we could do this, which Andrew kind of alluded to. So we could do the 10-year expired, right? And then if it's good, you renew it. Or you could do an ad hoc that just focused on probably the biggest issue, which is the additional land we're going to need. And we got to be careful here, Bill. We think that the population of Southborough in 2030, based on a couple of demographic studies we did for the new school project, is going to be 30% seniors. Then, so I don't know what you did to do the math 10 years. It may be sooner than that, given that the whole state, the whole country, there's just a lot of baby boomers that are getting older, right? So it may come sooner than you think. So therefore, I do think we, no matter what, need a plan to figure out where we're going to expand to, because I don't think there's going to be a ton of choices. So I have great respect for what you want. So I'd like to do something here. Maybe Sam or someone, are you going to meet with Jay the next time he's here for office hours?
Plan to, yeah.
Maybe you sit down with Jay and kind of try to flesh this out with him as far as how to do this simply. I talked to Mr. Litt a few minutes ago before the meeting started, and he's looked at the statute very closely, like he does. And he has warned me about some pitfalls we may about to fall into by doing this, as far as how to do it. And I guess the warrant, which I didn't see, Tim knew more about the draft warrant than I did. He says that we've got the language to basically amend the special act again. And then he warned what's going to happen if you do that. So I think we need to be careful about how we do it and try to do it in a way that is not cumbersome.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe the next step is, it looks like you've got a consensus here to do something, right? We know we've got one person here that is willing to step up. That was on the former cemetery commission. I know you're there, Kevin. I'll get to you, I promise. So I think it sounds like you've got an appetite to take this another step and look at it, right? Maybe leave the maintenance out of it. The big charge is the land, and then the other capital pieces, then some of the smaller things that people would prefer to do, not in the open. But I'm with Andrew. We haven't had to deal with very much from the time I've been on the select board as far as cemetery stuff. So I don't think that's a big lift for us at this point. There still may be some things that people aren't coming forward with because they don't want to do it in public. So there could be that group, right, that we could help out. But I think maybe if Sam can, since you rarely meet with Jay on his,
Follow up with Jay.
yeah, and just tell him, if we do this, we want to do it simply. Maybe look at what other towns truly have done to try to keep it simple.
Yep, and I have looked at some of that, so.
Okay, and so we just keep this on the agenda. We'll do it again at a next meeting, right? And just keep talking till we get to the point we think we've got a good answer.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Is everybody okay with that? So we're not going to decide anything tonight,
Yeah, in listening
Not
to
going to
the,
decide anything tonight.
right? That's what I said. I'm looking at you.
in listening to the.
Other than Sam is going to sit down with Jay and try to figure out how to do this legally, simply.
I think we ought to have this commission be, if we do this, it should be as lightweight as possible. I think most of their function should be advisory rather than policymaking. It's real, and I agree with you. The expansion is the big issue, you
I
know.
mean, you brought that up
Yeah,
a long time ago. Mr. Litt has informed me tonight too that this, if you look at the statute, they've got the ability to hire people. So I don't think that's where we want to go. So that's why I think we need to be careful here.
Elected
right?
commissions
Yeah.
too.
So I think we've agreed, we want an appointed and we want 3. So maybe that's the 2 things we kind of all seem to, if we do it.
I'm not committed to supporting this. just to be
Okay, I
clear,
said
but-
if we decide to
All
do
right,
it, at
okay,
least we kind of got that maybe decided. So are you okay with Sam going to meet with Jay and see what Jay recommends to do to try to keep this simple and efficient and
Yeah,
streamlined?
I mean, so just one point teasing out if this is, which would be my preference, it's like an advisory ad hoc, okay, committee. You try it out to see how it works. That would mean, I think part of what you are looking to accomplish is like if there's appeals from some little decision-making or kind of adjudicatory type things that you're also looking to maybe offload. I think if you go the advisory committee, I don't know whether that fully does that or. Okay,
Right.
Yeah. Which is, my preference is to keep it advisory, but then I know you want to go further from it. to have
Right.
it. Okay. But there's, all right.
So we haven't decided anything other than we've got maybe some structure issues that we agree on. Mr. Miller,
Ms. Cook, thank you. I don't want to sing to the choir.
tell us who you are first.
Kevin Miller, 18 Lattisquama. I'm speaking both as a private citizen and as chair of the Historical Commission. I'm very strongly in support of Mr. Cundiff's request and did want to note that the Historical Commission did take this up as an agenda item at a recent meeting, and we are, as a body, very strongly in support. There've been concerns about that we've had as a commission about both cemeteries since I came on the Historical Commission in June of 21. And I do see Bill's proposal as a way to, an avenue for us to address some of the issues. I think, appreciate the select board feeling that it hasn't been a heavy lift up until this point. However, I think that's because there are things that need to be addressed. And I think, and a cemetery commission could really help DPW get those things done. And that, the Historical Commission would be really strongly committed to working with such a body to address some of our concerns. Then as a private citizen, I appreciate like the concerns about rates of volunteerism, committee bloat, all that kind of stuff. But the space issue at the cemetery seems to me, that's a freight train coming straight at us. And, 10 years is a blip in the 300-year history of Southborough. And I would advise whatever the composition of the committee, that you really try to get a couple of real visionary people on there, because I think visionary thinking is going to be needed in terms of demographic trends, sociological trends, and economic trends to handle the fact that Southborough has limited space, and we're not going to get any back unless they drain the reservoirs. So again, Historical Commission is strongly in support and would hope you would consider giving Mr. Cundiff what he wants in this score. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Tim?
Woodland Road. You'll probably be surprised at my position on this one. Couple of things. First, I would stay as far away from the state-defined cemetery commission as you can. I took a look at section 114 of the general laws just out of curiosity. It's a book. Anything that you organize under that has defined responsibilities under the statute. And what you're talking about is a very small subset of that. It's operational. And yes, even the appointed committees have the ability to incur debt and hire people within some limits set by the select board, if I remember correctly, section 27. I think there are a couple of ways of slicing this, because I hear the problem and I think you definitely want to look at it. I do agree that the land issue is one that lends itself towards a ad hoc committee, because once you have the land, it stops. Right? And, it's something that you can appoint. It has a clear mission. Mission gets discharged, the committee goes away. As far as dealing with the operational issues where Bill could use some support, one approach that you haven't talked about is for Bill to simply appoint an advisory committee. This is what his predecessor did for the sidewalk committee some years ago. It is exempt from some of the provisions of the open meeting laws. So that helps you in terms of the sensitive issues kinds of things. And basically such a committee is, it exists as long as Bill wants it to exist. It can advise on, any decision that Bill could make by himself is sort of the way that reads, if I remember the law correctly. And so if you, delegate to Bill the authority to deal with, the day-to-day decisions and the things that might become appealed, then it's something that he can consult such an appointed committee to, on for, their advice in terms of how to proceed. And, how much, how that works then becomes an internal matter to DPW. I guess the third point I'll make is you really don't want to touch the special act. If you were to, for example, as the draft warrant suggests, remove cemetery from the special act, then we're back instantly to an elected cemetery commission under 114. And the whole point of the special act was to consolidate overlapping functions and get efficiencies and not have management conflicts over resources and all that sort of thing. So you don't want to go there. If you did that and then wanted and appointed by the selectmen committee, as I understand it, the town would then have to take a vote under, what is it, section 41 or something. It's required by section 27 to say that we want to have an appointed rather than an elected cemetery commission. This is just a tangled kind of mess, and I don't see the advantages. I'm very sympathetic to the problem statement, but I don't think you want to go at it in the ways that you've been talking about. That's my 2 cents. Usual disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, I just read.
That was very helpful, Tim, seriously. More than 2 cents. Okay, so we've got a plan, Sam, you know what you got to do.
Yep.
Right?
Okay.
Thank you.
And then we'll keep talking about till we come to a really good decision
Thank you.
that supports you.
Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Matt is here. So the last thing on the agenda before we go to executive session is water rates for the next year. Oh, that's right. Is she here? Sorry. Thank you, Kevin. Hello, Matt.
Melissa is actually here. You wanna get
She's
that-
there now?
You want to get that update?
Because we just looked when you think she was here.
In the audience.
Can we do one thing before we start this?
Sure.
We've got our conservation agent here that's going to do a quick overview of where things stand. And this won't take long.
I think you can stay here.
Yeah, you don't have to. She's coming by Zoom.
She's
Yeah.
remote.
All right, so can we bring Melissa over? She's not, is she there? Hey, Melissa.
Hello.
All right. How you doing?
I'm good. How is everyone?
We're good, but you're good?
Yes, we are doing good over in conservation.
Okay, I'm asking about you personally. Are you doing good?
Yeah. Yes, and I'm not sure if everyone knows, but I will be going out on leave the end of March, so for a little bit. All good news, everything is well.
Okay, and I've heard you've got a good plan in place for when you're going.
Yes.
Which I'm not
Yep.
surprised about.
Yep.
Mel-
No.
Melissa, Mark is going to send you, we've got a citizens petition that you're going to want to read and Conservation Commission is going to want to read. So he's going
Sure.
to get that to you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we just wanted to hear from you before you went on leave to see where things are, what you want us to know, et cetera.
Sure. In terms of the farm dump, we're still making good progress. Basically, all the excavation aspect of the project has been completed. The only thing left is just the final restoration, which is planting and site stabilization. We are expecting that proposed plan from our environmental engineer within the next 2 weeks, so we can get that off to Conservation Commission and Stewardship for their comments. So I hope to have that finalized before I am out. That's what we are looking for. I went over that timeline with the chair of stewardship today to make sure that she was aware of when that was coming in case they need to post a couple extra meetings. We're still, that will require one kind of last change order for the final restoration aspect of it. But even with that, we should still be running $1 million under the total 4.4 that was appropriated. So still doing good with the total money spent. Our engineering firm and contractor has been great to work with. The site has been stabilized for overwinter with a tackifier until springtime. And then once the ground is ready to go, they'll get started again. We won't be necessarily bringing in fill to bring up to previous grades. It'll really just be kind of loaming, putting down some cover crop type materials and some plantings to make a nice kind of more naturalized habitat than just kind of the stark open area that it is now. We uncovered kind of a connection between two isolated wetlands. So we're connecting those. So it's turned into a great kind of wetland mitigation. It's not going to be an area that probably the public will have access to for like a new trail or something. It's not that big. But some good kind of just educational aspects to it as well. And kind of a future so that there won't be any use restrictions on that area, like there is in sometimes with the cleanups like this. But all, post excavation testing has come back clean. We're very happy with the work that's been done. All trash is removed, all debris. So everything, after we got through that initial hurdle with the asbestos, everything went pretty smoothly and quickly after that. So I'm happy to report we will be wrapping that up by the end of this year, definitely, once all those plantings and such are installed.
So right now we have been told, so Brian's bonded $3.6 million as of tonight. Do you think that's the right number?
Yes, so I had him bond a little bit extra than just the kind of flat 1 million underneath, just to have a little bit of wiggle room in case the restoration came back a little bit higher than expected. But yes, that is still my expected number.
Okay, so $3.6 million is what we should have in our head as far as what we think the conservative total cost is of the cleanup.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Anybody have any questions on that before she goes on? So I've got a related question, Melissa. This is putting you a little bit on the spot. The 5 acres that Dave Ferris will need to donate to the town per the agreement in 2019 to the planning board. Have we looked at that land at all to make sure that that land has no issues?
I don't think we've done it in terms of environmental assessment, but I believe that was part of the planning board conditions that has to be done prior to conveyance. So I wouldn't say we've looked at it from the perspective of solid waste or debris, but I know that is a requirement before we take it on.
Okay, I don't remember that being in their order, but it could be. All right, so everybody agrees that's a good idea to make sure we understand what we're getting, correct?
Not only a good idea, but a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, in other words, lessons learned, maybe?
Right? Due diligence, yes.
Yep. I mean, Melissa, you were, this was 40 years ago. So a lot of people weren't around then.
I do have another question for Melissa, if I can.
Okay.
Melissa, it's Sam, are we, do we believe that our friends at DEP are very happy with how this is going? I've not heard any questions or concerns.
Extremely
So
pleased.
I'm assuming they're pleased.
Yes. Yep.
Good.
Very much so. You know, they both on the asbestos side and the solid waste side have been out there consistently throughout the cleanup. We've gotten a, you know, clean bill of health thus far. They were there when we did the final removal and kind of have signed off on those. You know, there's not kind of an official sign off on each step, but have given us the okay, yes, you removed all the material that we are looking for. You know, let us know when you get it stabilized, and that's kind of the end of it with them. So we are very close to the end of the ACO, which is great.
And what's the ongoing monitoring requirement?
The ongoing monitoring requirement, it'll depend on a couple of the results from the analyticals. As of now, it's all of our groundwater sampling has come back with, you know, 0 levels, non-reportables. So I believe, and I'll double check with our environmental engineer, it might take 1 more year of just checking those. But because of most of the levels, it sounds like there will be limited to none of the ongoing, especially on a long-term timeline.
Great, thank you.
All right,
I've got a couple of questions.
go ahead, Al.
In the excavations, have you been able to identify the ultimate source of any of the materials that were deposited there so many years ago?
So we know all the material, you know, kind of stemmed from when Farmer Davis was the owner of the property. You know, a lot of it was construction material. The asbestos was kind of construction material, roofing tiles, cement board, etc. There was even some equipment, you know, tractors from when it was Tractor Supply. You know, wouldn't be surprised if he took in some neighborhood trash, that kind of like plasticky material. So, you know, it was definitely kind of a mix of the times. And I think, you know, doing your neighbor a solid and allowing them to dump off some trash, because that's kind of where he kind of deposited a lot of his just agricultural waste as well, whether it be metal or plastic or construction materials.
Al, to your point, it sounded like there was no large drum of hazardous stuff that said produced, provided by
There was,
Smith.
yes, well, that was kind of the question, is whether there were any pockets that could be gone after.
We can pursue, yeah.
Yeah, we've kind of eliminated that there are no other pockets, at least in this area. You know, we excavated to a depth where we did not reach any more solid waste. So we are very confident that, you know, unless it's somewhere else in the property that we are totally unaware of, which there's no indication of, we have removed everything that has been there.
Hey, Donahue looked really hard to see if there was something that would reimburse us, and came back and said no. She talked to federal agencies, she talked to states, so she did a pretty exhaustive, I think, research of where we might be able to find to help us, but not there. All right, Melissa, what other good news?
You know, it's been pretty status quo in the conservation land. You know, we've kind of been even keel on applications, not a whole lot of new development going on. So we've been able to kind of focus on some of our just internal processes and cleaning those up. You know, the assistant Laura has done a great job on getting everything as much as possible electronically. You know, we've gotten our stuff on Viewpoint that the building department uses. So everything kind of moving forward will all be available to the public, and we've trying to backlog those, which has been a great help in kind of consolidating information into one place that's easily digestible by homeowners, you know, anyone looking for information. You know, it's coming up on community gardens time sooner rather than later. So we've talked with the community gardens coordinator and started those talks of what his plan for the season is, and, you know, getting the signups out a little bit earlier this year. You know, but otherwise, I think we've just been working on creating a plan for when I'm out for those weeks, you know, and talking with the commission on responsibilities and process so that there's no, you know, delay in timing of permits and decisions, etc. So I think we've set ourselves up for success, you know, and trying to think of any possible iteration of things that could come up, so that Laura and the commission is prepared for them. So I think we're ready for that. And yeah, otherwise it's been fairly quiet, just taking things as they come. Like I said, just kind of focusing more on our kind of internal processes and trying to streamline a little bit more to better assist more efficiently the public.
Anything else?
One other quick one. Have you heard anything further from the trustees on their plans to find a farmer?
I have not. It's been silent on my end. I thought they were going to get their RFP out in January, but I haven't seen anything come through. So it's definitely on my list of things I've been trying to follow up on. I haven't seen anything posted about it either. So we've been trying to figure out where they're going, but as of now, no update on that one.
Melissa, can you check on that before you leave and let Al know?
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Or, okay, see, he says he'll do it. Okay. All right. Anything else, Melissa?
I don't think so.
All right. So we do wish you well.
Thank you.
Okay. We hope to see you soon.
Yes, I promised to send a picture, so I will do so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So truly enjoy this time.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Okay, now to water rates. So Bill, you want to tee this up, introduce Matt? I know we
Sure
all know
thing.
Who he is, but
I'll give you a brief overview of, how we got here. And wanted to say we've worked closely with Carla and Brian Ballantyne, and they've been a key integral part of this. I've worked also with Matt Abrams from the Abrams Group, LLC. And Matt's helped us out, I believe, ever since we formed the enterprise fund. So, he's got the history and the background with the town. So we continue to enjoy his service. So as you may recall, we made the decision a few years back on the structure of billing for the water department. For those that don't know, the enterprise fund is self-sufficient. It's not taking money from the tax base. We operate solely on user revenue that we incur from billing for the water. The fee is broken down into two components, a base charge and a usage charge. The base charge covers fixed costs like employee salaries, health insurance, employee benefits, and central services. That includes time from town hall that perhaps billing occurs and, accounting for the staff and that sort of thing. The usage charge reflects the costs that are directly associated with water consumption, including the purchase of water from MWRA, electricity, and other operational expenses, and capital improvements. And that's going to be an important feature for the discussion this year. As you may or may not be aware, the water department has a master plan. And as part of that master plan, we lay out a number of capital improvement projects that are recommended to be done in the near-term future. Those improvements are showing up in this year's rate schedule under the usage charge. So you'll see that borne out. The projects we have on the horizon include upgrading water mains around Lynbrook Road. That's risen in priority because we're talking with the state. Currently, Lynbrook's a state road, in case anyone didn't know. Lynbrook's the old Route 30, and they never conveyed the rights to the town, so it's still a state road. So we've been working with the state to improve Lynbrook. They want to do it. So we're going to have them improve Lynbrook and Granuel on the other side of 495 in consideration for making improvements to those roads. So that's part of the reason this capital project rose on the list. That combined with the low ranking on the pipe quality So the combination of those things made it an obvious choice to get done. We've expedited the consideration of this project, not only for the Mass DOT project, but also to take advantage of a zero interest MWRA loan, which expires at the end of this fiscal year. So we want to capitalize on that as well. We also are looking at looping the water main between Presidential Drive and Fisher Road. That will improve water quality in that area. And lastly, we have some tank maintenance on the tower tank that we need to do. So the combination of those capital projects are going to show up in the fee structure. They were not there last year, as I was only here 6 months and I was still coming up to speed. So that being said, I'm going to turn this over to Matt, and he has a slideshow that I'm sure he can do a great job presenting. Correct. Yep.
Hi, good evening. Matt Abrahams from the Abrahams Group. Happy to be back before you to discuss the State of the Water Enterprise Fund, as well as to begin the conversation on rate setting for the upcoming fiscal year of FY26. And as you may recall from recent presentations that we've done, we don't just look at 1 year into the future when we're having that discussion on setting rates for the next fiscal year. We'd like to give you a multi-year look so you can see fiscal years beyond just the next fiscal year, FY26 in this case. So we've done the same as part of our analysis for the town again this year, and we've included the results of that analysis in the packet that you've received, as well as on the slides that we'll be going through momentarily. So please just keep that in mind. I believe we'll be focused on setting a rate for FY26, but we'll be presenting rates further into the future than just FY26 as we move forward with our presentation. So we have compiled an Excel workbook, as we do every year, that has all the numbers, all the analysis, all the number crunching that produces the information that we will be reviewing this evening. I believe Bill has a copy of that, as well as Carla and Tammy as well. So that information is available if you want to dive a little bit deeper, but we will present again, the high level results of the analysis this evening. So slide number 1, we'd like to just take a quick look back at what has happened in the recent past. This is an updated slide from last year's presentation. We added what happened last year in terms of changes to the structure in that top table. So now we have about 10 years of looking back into what has happened with water rates over that period. And you can see that there's a wild variation with what has happened, including several years where nothing happened, but also multiple years in which tiers changed or the base charge changed as well. So we think back to 2 years ago at this time, we looked at tier changes and we looked at a change to the methodology that produced the base charge. That was 2 years ago. Last year, we kept that methodology for the base charge, and it produced a pretty significant increase to the base charge of about 25% because of indirect costs going up at the time. Rates were increased 3.5% last year per our recommendation. So that's a quick snapshot of what we did last year. The bottom table is just a financial look at how the fund has performed over the last few years, including a projection for the current fiscal year of FY25. Now, I just want to quickly note that we are not including retained earnings that have been appropriated as a funding source here. So this is true bottom line impact on retained earnings. So for example, FY22 had a deficit of about $439,000. Presumably retained earnings fully cover that. And we are projecting a deficit of about $300,000 in FY25. So again, retained earnings will cover that. Retained earnings historically has been pretty strong over the last few years. It has dipped a little bit recently. We're projecting about $380,000 at the end of this fiscal year, but that does not include a rate increase for the upcoming fiscal year of FY26. If one were to happen, then the retained earnings certification would be a little bit higher because less would be needed to balance the budget. Okay.
Can you clarify that? So in other words, what we're about to decide to do would affect fiscal year 25.
Yes,
So we
in a
reduced
roundabout
revenue.
way, yes.
Okay, so we increased revenue.
No, if you were to authorize an increase for FY '26, what that means is we're currently projecting a deficit for FY '26. That deficit would presumably be less because you're authorizing additional revenue to be raised in FY '26.
Okay, I thought you said 25. Okay, so this is what 25 is expected to look like.
Right, but the bottom, that retained earnings certification number, what you reserve for FY '26 does impact that number.
You explained that to us last year, how it's not a straightforward roll
It's
forward.
not.
So I'm not, so we
It's-
won't get into that.
The DOR calculation for how retained earnings is determined is complicated, yes. Okay,
Can I go back and ask? a
yes,
question?
sure.
I don't know if it's a question for you or for Bill. So like in FY '25 projections for total expenditures, there's a significant, like $600,000 increase from FY '24 to FY '25. What explains that? Is there a big capital project that?
Dry summer.
For water.
You're talking about expenses.
Yeah.
Income.
Yeah.
Expenses are income. They're both up.
No, revenues are up like,
500,000.
yeah, and then expenditures are up, but they look like to me, they look like they're up at a higher pace.
So I can explain what I think it is. Part of it was indirect costs, which went up a significant amount. It went up about $130,000 from the prior year. And the other big piece, two big pieces, has to do with,
Direct cost is not, it's not really you're taking expenditures from the tax base, tax part of the budget, putting them in the enterprise fund part of the budget, right?
Yes.
Okay.
He's right.
there are expenses that are incurred in the general fund that are incurred on behalf of the Water Enterprise Fund. So it's the way that the enterprise fund is basically reimbursing the general fund for that.
Okay, thanks.
So that's a big piece. The articles line is up. I mean, it's a budgeted number for articles. It's budgeted, meaning like these are the things that have been authorized to be spent out of capital.
Yeah.
Those,
Authorized
there's
at the
no,
last town meeting.
yes, there's no guarantee they're going to be fully spent. We are assuming they're going to be fully spent in that number that you're looking at right there.
Okay.
So if they're not fully spent, that expense number goes down.
Right.
So those are the two biggest pieces of why that number is much higher than last year. So it's a number based on the budget. Now, that may not be your actual expenses in FY '25.
Okay.
That's a budgeted number as of now. That's 3.3 million. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so here's our first look at I was gonna say a potential rate plan, but it's really not. So what we wanted to show you here is our baseline was what we were looking at for a rate plan last year at this time when we were deciding on a rate. You may recall that we became pretty comfortable with what we were looking at, and that included a 3% annual increase to water rates over, at the time, it was 4 years. Now, the financial picture has changed since we were here a year ago, and we're going to explain that on the next few slides. But what we wanted to show you was if we were to implement that rate plan that we were looking at last year, what the financial picture looks like. And that's what we have here for you. So with a 3% increase annually over the next 5 years, including FY '26, we believe that the fund will have enough of a revenue deficit that retained earnings will be depleted very quickly and continue to go downward from there. So this is not a viable rate plan anymore, unfortunately, but we did want to show you this just so you had kind of a starting point. And this is what we were talking about last.
Once you deplete a fund, how does it continue to go down?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
So I'm
Yeah.
showing-
Thank you.
I mean, this is obviously theoretical and can't happen.
Yeah, it's theoretical is a good word. It's not possible. Once you add a retained earnings, then you need to find a way to get those back. So, yes. Okay, next slide, please. So what changed? Why does the financial picture look way different? Here are two large reasons why. Number one, revenue estimates. When we did this last year, you may recall that we were coming off of a year where there was a transition to the billing structure. The tiers changed. On top of that, there were a decent amount of monthly accounts that were converted to quarterly accounts. So when we were trying to compile what we thought a good usage number was, we were working off of data that it was reliable, but we couldn't use it as is. We kind of had to tinker with it because A, the tiers changed, and B, those monthly accounts were now quarterly accounts. So we did our best to try and massage the data into what we thought that would be for 1 year worth of usage and ultimately revenue. And we learned, unfortunately, this year that we were high on those estimates when we did that. So in other words, we are now looking at revenue estimates or usage estimates that produce revenue that are lower than what we were looking at this time last year. Now that we have a full year's worth of data that we can rely on at the current billing structure, including the monthlies now being quarterlies. So that's one big piece of it. The other big piece of it is the capital plan, and Bill alluded to this in his opening comments. So we did do a quick analysis on what the dollars look like when we were before you a year ago in the capital plan that we included in the study, in the analysis, and what the dollars look like now. So this is what is in the capital plan, the dollar amounts of projects and items and equipment that is in the capital plan. Last year at this time, just over $1 million. From FY26 to FY29, now we're looking at about $3.9 million that we've included in the analysis. Now, as we're going to show you on the subsequent slide, on the next slide, some of that capital investment that's planned will presumably be funded using available MWRA loans that can be obtained using a very desirable interest rate because it's 0%. This is a program that has been available, I believe, to the town that has not been taken advantage of, at least in the recent past. But now the town is planning on and has started the process of taking advantage of this financing. So because that financing is available from the MWRA, which is again very favorable, it makes sense for the town to go after it. So that's another reason why the capital plan is showing the numbers that it is, because the town wants to take advantage of this available financing. And here's what is in the capital plan, the current capital plan. I don't necessarily need to read this to you, but there are 3 larger projects which we've put an asterisk next to. The $1.5 million one in FY26, Lynbrook, which Bill talked about earlier. FY27, the loop at Fisher Presidential, $1 million. I think Bill also mentioned that earlier. And maintenance on the Terra tank, FY28, $700,000. Each of those projects are currently planned to be financed by the available 0% MWRA loans that I mentioned earlier. So that's about $3.2 million of the 3.8 that we were talking, or 3.9 we were talking about. And you can see that there are a few other things in here. There are a few pieces of equipment, main improvements, and I guess that's all. And also just a quick comment. So the capital plan that we originally were looking at a few weeks back had a little bit more in here. And this is an adjusted version of that to try and, I guess, dial back what we were looking at for potential rate impact. Now, of course, there still is a pretty significant potential rate impact even with this plan, but the impact was higher with the original plan. I just wanted you to be aware that this was an adjusted version of the original capital plan.
Can I ask a question here?
Sure.
I hate to say this, but I think your 27 through 30 numbers are very light. I mean, we have 88 miles of water pipe in the ground, and you know, at $1.5 million a mile to replace, even if they last 100 years, we're talking over $1 million a year in sort of capital maintenance. I mean, I don't think we're dealing with reality here. And, you know, I'll let Bill defend this, but we got a handle on 26. I don't think in the out years we have a handle on what it's really going to cost to maintain our infrastructure.
So if I may, so as you know, the town of Hopkinton has a project that's going on, and as part of the discussions with the town, they are also, if their project goes forward and things work out, they are also going to replace miles of water main in town. In addition to that, we're going to have a fund that gets established so we can prioritize other items that are on our capital list. So I think if that goes forward and this goes forward, I think we have a lot on our plate to get done over the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
good answer.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, next slide, please. So what does all this mean in terms of the impact on the charges and the rates? First, we'll talk about the base charge. As Bill alluded to earlier, what the base charge is focused on, this is the methodology that we adopted 2 years ago at this time. It's focused on recovering identified fixed costs that the water department has annually, specifically salaries, but not including overtime because that's not fixed, and indirect costs. Those are the costs that are part of this methodology annually. We use the American Water Works Association Support Equivalent Meters methodology in order to set the base charges. So last year at this time, we had a conversation with, we presented to you whether this methodology should continue to be used in FY25. The decision was yes. That meant a 25% increase, mainly due to a large increase in OPEB contribution. Well, if this methodology continues to be used for the upcoming fiscal year of FY26, now we're looking at an adjustment to the base charge in the opposite direction. Indirect costs have now gone down by about 11%. So up 25%, now we're looking at a decrease of 11%.
So Mark is faster than I am. I was going, why do they both say fiscal year 25? The right column should say fiscal year 26.
Yes, that is a mistake on my part, and I apologize for that. The rightmost column should say FY26 in this chart. So the middle column, where it says FY25 base charge, that are the charges. Those are the charges today, the current charges. The rightmost column should say FY26 base charge. Those are what the charges would be based on continuing to use the methodology and a decrease of about 11%.
And the vast majority of residential meters are either the 5/8 inch or 3/4 inch.
The vast majority are 5/8 inch.
Okay.
There's a
So the
minor
one,
portion that's
1 inch and above is commercial stuff.
correct.
Okay.
And these charges that are in the table represent quarterly charges. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have two options for your consideration this evening. And they take a little bit of a different approach in terms of a rate plan. So what we've done is we've assumed that the base charge methodology will stay in place for each of the 5 fiscal years. So we already talked about 11% decrease there for FY26. Generally, we're assuming a 4.5% increase annually. So we have assumed that in the future years. So then the question is, well, what do we do about the rates? We generally like to target a retained earnings percentage of 20%. And that 20% is 20% of fund expenses. You may recall that first slide, we were projecting somewhere around 12%, but I also made the comment that if you do a rate change for FY26, that percentage will be higher. So we're starting with 12 as our baseline. It's presumably going to be a little bit above that. So we're kind of in the ballpark already for 20%. This rate plan here, we decided to take the approach of going a little bit higher for FY26. I guess it's a lot higher, 25% for FY26, with 5% increases in the subsequent years, 27 through 30. Again, a 5-year look, as I said in my opening comments. We also like to include a projected per bill impact to a sample group of users, and this is the same sample group that we showed you last year. And I tend to focus on the average residential user, which is the 4th user down, actually the one right in the middle. So a current bill, these are quarterly bills. current bill for the average residential user, which we assume has a 5/8" meter, because that does matter for the base charge, $148 per quarter with the 25% increase, but also with the 11% decrease in the base charge. That works out to be an increase of about $18 per quarter, which gets up to about $166 per quarter. So $18 per quarter is about a $72 per year impact to the average residential user under this option.
So that's what, 12, 13%?
My math's not that good.
Well, 10%.
Yeah, just over 12%. And you can see with this rate plan, we do show the graph. The graph, you saw the graph on that baseline slide. With the rate plans that's in here, the blue, which is the projected retained earnings, does stay right around the target. That graph shows that on this slide. Next slide, please. And here's another option, and this is the recommended one, recommended being the town staff recommends based on discussions that we had. You don't see quite as large of an increase in FY26. We're looking at 15% for this option. And if you're looking at a lower increase in year one, that means higher increases in the subsequent years. So we have those as 9% in the subsequent years. And you can see based on the graph that the blue actually dips below the orange here, but works its way back towards it by the end of the 5-year period. The impact on the average residential user under this scenario is about $8 per quarter, which works out to be about $32 per year. And can you just go back one slide, please? I just want to make a quick comment that when we were looking at potential rate plan options, we did focus on what we had as a projected deficit for FY26. And we focused on rate increases that we thought would eliminate that deficit. And this increase of 15% did get us right towards eliminating the projected deficit that we had in FY26. And obviously the higher one, the 25% increase, would do so as well. Okay, next slide, please. And then I'll let Bill speak to this, but this is a compilation of how Southborough's water rates compare to other MWRA communities' water rates.
So basically, I worked with Nate Cody at MWRA Advisory Committee, and he got me, this is last year data, FY24, and it's assuming consumption of 100 cubic feet of water over the course of the year. So it's slightly more than what the average user uses, but it gives us a baseline at least to see how Southborough compares to the rest of the communities. And as you can see on that chart for MWRA communities, we're slightly below what the average bill might be. We're in the lower half.
But that's 2 years ago.
That's FY24. This is a survey
year
we
we
just,
just finished.
because everybody already had their rates established. So it's a hypothetical, scenario.
And these are pretty stable year to year, as a matter of fact, unlikely that it's going to change a lot because everybody's affected by more or less the same kind of factors here.
So you would expect this to look the same year to year,
pretty much.
regardless of what we do to rates, because everybody else is going to do the same thing.
Pretty much the same, yeah.
So we're in at least the bottom half.
Yeah.
Not too far down the bottom half, but we're in the bottom half. Newton, look at that. Framingham, my goodness. Marblehead. Matt, are you going to show us the proposed tiers for fiscal year 26?
I don't think I have those in the slides, but I can read them to you. I have the numbers. And I think it was also in the memo as well that Bill issued. It's in there.
I saw tiers, but I thought they were this year's, but they didn't. Is this proposed?
That's what
Proposed?
that's the proposed, correct.
Because I knew they didn't look like last year's. Okay, so this is proposed. Because one thing we could do is play around with this too, right? In other words, reward those that use less. I hate to use the word penalize, but charge more for those that use more, right? So we could do that too.
And we've already done a fair amount of that.
I know, I mean, you're right, 238 up to 12, so I agree. But when you talk about at least tier 3 and tier 4, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe part of tier 2, you're talking commercial users for the most part?
Yes.
Aren't you the one who's usually friendly to businesses? in town?
I'm very friendly with businesses. I'm just throwing this out there as a.
Yeah.
But all businesses pay this,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
I have a question. This may be a dumb question. Why do we have to decrease, in both scenarios, you decrease the base charge?
Yeah, because
Yes.
our fixed costs went down.
I understand that, but could you just, it seems like we kind of overestimated the increase the base charge too much last year, and then we're kind of making up for it by decreasing it this year. If you just kept the base rate charge the same, and then you had a lower rate change, targeting to get the same level of revenue, then would it be more predictable? You'd be more of a chance you'd actually get that because less of it is dependent on the volume that each user is using, and that's so hard to predict due to seasonality and weather and things like that.
I understand where you're coming from. My first reaction was the same, and I had Matt run a bunch of scenarios
Okay.
based on that. But really, it boils down to the methodology. And if you buy into the science or the methodology behind the logic as to how we got to the base charge versus the user charge, there was a substantial change this year in the methodology. So
We approved at the last meeting, it's one of our new financial policies where the indirect costs are going to be computed differently. And so that's what's happening. We've approved a new way to compute indirect cost based on the state recommendation. And so it's come down. So we're not going to get as much of an interest. It's all indirect costs. That's what's happened here.
So I want to say
Yeah, my point that it's-
Yeah.
the methodology is sound, however, so I struggled with that at first, but the methodology makes sense. Carla and Brian were explaining the cost and how the logic went down for cost. So
I mean, at the end of the day, rather than.
it comes out in the
Right,
wash,
right,
Andrew,
well,
is what
yeah,
it does.
Because I thought, look, what is the bottom line is how much does each
Right.
person's average bill
Right.
goes up and this goes up.
Cost.
An acceptable amount. And you spread it off over the next couple of years rather than front loading it again. So it all kind of makes some common sense.
Right. There is a structure here, yeah.
Well, the structure is you're trying to recover the fixed cost, no matter what. And so by having a fixed cost that people have to pay, your costs that you have to pay, whether you use a dime of water or not, are going to be covered. So that was our theory to doing that. And now we are changing the fixed costs by the indirect cost allocation method change. And so those fixed costs are coming down. But it'll be a one-time thing. They come down and then we continue to, then we do it. And so going forward, the base charge should be
Yeah,
steady.
hopefully.
But your point,
Kind of gyrated like crazy. the
your
last
point's a
few
good
years.
one. I mean, technically, you could leave it the same if that was the will of this board. But just keep in mind that for 2 straight years now, the same methodology has been in place. So you'd be moving away from that.
20 is what they recommend, so we're not even close to 20. So if we do the second recommendation that the staff apparently came up with, your retained earnings are nowhere near your 20% that,
Initially.
Initially,
we
but
get
that's,
back to that.
well,
the subsequent years are designed such that it'll bring you back to there.
Yeah.
they get back to 18, but it goes down to 11, goes down to 9.
Yeah, it goes
So
down,
16,
it goes
12,
down
9.
fairly low.
I think if some of those capital funding options that Bill talked about don't come to fruition in that 28 and 29 period, you're not going to have the retained earnings to help offset, a significant increase, try to maintain some of the things Mr. Hamilton was talking about.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So for example, if Hopkinton didn't happen,
Correct.
for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As of today, we received an email, Bill and I did, and it still appears that it's going to happen. They've got their new commission formed to do this. So
Good. Well, we tracked
That's
the
all we know.
metric of the brownness of water in Hopatcong to test the seriousness there.
So we don't have, Matt, or you may have with you, New Hampshire, the revenue per tier, right?
It's not in the presentation, but I have that information for you if you want to hear it.
I do want to hear it.
Okay.
I want to hear what the top two tiers get us versus the lower two tiers.
Is this assuming a certain option or just?
Yeah, assume option one.
Option one?
Yeah.
So option one, if you were to adopt it, I have estimated revenue per tiers being about $307,000 for tier one, $531,000 for tier two, $429,000 for tier three, and just over $1 million for tier four.
Okay, so more than 50% of our revenue comes from 3 and 4, right?
Yes,
A lot more.
about, yep.
Right? Which means from businesses. Which includes all ratepayers, which includes private schools, anything that's tax exempt still pays water bills.
Correct. Correct.
I think based on the way that your tiers fall, you will have some families in tier three for sure, but those would be the higher end users of families that are in
That are
tier.
they're
Irrigating them.
irrigation,
Yeah,
that's what
right.
they're using. it for,
Right.
right? Okay, so we've got two options in front of us. We've got one that would generate about a 12% increase in the average user. And then from that point on, it looks like maybe a 9% increase year over year.
5%. Option one is 5% in the subsequent years.
But it looks like the base is going up 4.5, so I added the two together.
Oh, okay. If you look at it that way.
Well, I don't think anybody cares, they care what the bottom line bill is, they don't care.
Well, I
that.
think it's going to be weighted, so it's
Yeah.
not going to be.
All right, so I'm
true.
trying,
Yep.
so I think it'd be helpful if we really understood by tier what the impact of option one is versus option two. And then understood the percentage increases
Yep.
before we go. So the plan was, guys, to look at this tonight, talk about it, ask questions, and then vote on the 25th after we've really had time and ask Matt to do whatever he wanted to do to massage these numbers to give us more information so we can make the decision on what to do. And if we do it on the 25th, then we're going to have 4 quarters that it's going to apply to. Last year, we did it late, and so we only had 3 quarters.
That's correct.
This year, if we do it on the 25th, it will be spread over 4 quarters, so it won't be as bunched as it was last year. So it'll be a little bit less painful than it would be if we wait to after February 25th. So thoughts?
I've got
Go
a
ahead.
question and a comment.
Go ahead.
One question, to pull back something that we've heard about periodically, there are a very small number of residents in town who have multifamily units and who feel that they are overcharged because they pay with 1 meter there. They pay basically the higher usage rate versus if they were separately metered, they'd be, 4 individual users, which much lower volume. Is there a simple way that one could actually create another category for pricing to say, if you've got multiple units up to 5 units, then basically you automatically go back to the lower tier charge as opposed to the higher.
I'm
volume?
happy
We
to
only pay
address
one base
that.
charge though, too. So remember, there's an offset there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to address that. What I had to look at that for a particular resident
Yes.
in town. And what I found was that there's an assumption that you're not going to pay a base charge for each of those separate meters. But once you do work in the base charge, it's not even close.
Sorts out.
Correct.
Okay, all right, good, thank you. And my comment is, kudos to you for following up on the interest-free loans. The last several years, I've been preaching the fact that there are something like 51 water communities. Of those, 48 had drawn down almost all of their interest-free loans. Southborough was one of 3 who'd never touched that money. So I think it's finally great that we're actually doing that. There's been conversation around expanding that program, so I would not be surprised if there were more of that money going forward, but that's something the MWA executive board of directors needs to deal with, but there have been conversations about doing that. So I think there,
Thank you.
hopefully there's a possibility out there that that can happen. So we keep that in mind as we think about capital. Not free money,
No.
but it's pretty
Yeah.
attractive money. So good to use that. Thank you.
Can we go back to the slide on the capital plan to make sure we understand what we need to do for fiscal year 26 to make sure we do use the loan that's available?
Sure.
So we need to basically approve that 1.5 million.
So basically, the 1.5 million, we can easily use on Lynbrook. However, we can also subsidize the loop at Fisher and Park and Presidential. So we have two choices there. I'm working with PAR. PAR is actually, I have a contract with them to develop a more thorough capital plan, which was a recommendation in the master plan. So they're in the process of doing that. But at this stage, those are the two candidate projects for the loan.
But we've got to approve those for fiscal year 26.
We would make the application by mid-April, I believe is the deadline. Once we get the application in, that funding is secured.
Okay, even though it's going to be a fiscal 26
Yes.
project, but we need to
Yes.
get that approved. So you've got the money to spend. So you've got the loan to spend against it. Because if you don't have the project, you're not going to get the loan, right?
That's correct. So basically, you're saying the rate schedule, Kathy?
Yeah, I'm saying that we've got to make sure that we keep that on the capital plan for fiscal, we're going to have to cut some stuff from the capital plan.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you.
What
So
the,
we've got to keep that on there.
the
so that
capital,
we've got-
yes, the capital plan, you have to put in your project and you have to put in the dollar amount. How it's funded is the question on the capital plans. And, certainly we're not going to pay 1.5 million on day one. That's going to get dispersed over the 10 years at no interest, which is why we're doing it. And, so we this particular 1.5 million, and that number didn't come out of a hat. That number is what we're entitled to borrow from MWRA. So we're trying to maximize the use of that
Fiscal year 25.
for FY 26.
Okay, but you go in April prior to it, and then we've got to make sure you've got a project to match against it,
Yes,
right?
and we do.
Okay, I know, but it's got to get approved, Bill.
Yes.
Okay, so I know you got there, but we're talking about cutting back the capital plan to try to get the budget balance.
Right.
So we've got to understand that we need to leave this on there, so the
Sure,
loan.
sure.
will-
And this is in a special category in a sense.
Yeah,
There's,
But I also want to say, this is water and water is separate from the
course,
tax base. Yeah.
You're right, you're right, you're right,
Yeah.
you're right, right. Okay, so you're right. This is water, so,
but the other point too is that I can't remember the name of the guy who actually runs this one at MWRA, but I've spoken with him. He's a very helpful guy. And I would urge you just to stay real close to him in terms of here's what we want to do. Does this work?
Yes.
With how this works, because it can be pretty complicated in terms of that process.
We'll connect later.
He's hugely helpful.
Okay.
okay, so we've got option 1 and option 2. The base charge proposal is the same for both,
Yes,
right?
assuming
just-
methodology stays, yes.
Okay, so it's just the tiers, right?
It's the rates. It's really just a rate increase across all tiers. We have not run numbers related to different rate increases in different tiers, although we could do that if that's
Okay, so
something
do
of
we have
interest.
both sets of tiers that you're proposing? We've got one. Do we have the second one for option 2?
We had what's in the memo
Is option.
rates per tier for option 2, the recommended option. We have not yet presented that for option
That's
1.
option 2, what
Okay.
you have there.
All right, and you did that because this was what.
That's my
the staff-
recommendation.
That's what you recommended.
That's right.
Okay. Of course, Marguerite.
Bill, as the DPW head, do you have a sense of what most residents' reactions to their water bills are? Do you have complaints? Do you have commercial complaints? How are people responding to the varying rates?
We always get complaints. Yes, anytime there's an increase, no matter how modest, we're getting complaints. Not only for the water, but for the transfer station. And, anytime we go up in a fee, we try to do our best to keep things reasonable, as I think is borne out in the two options that we presented. And nonetheless, we do have an obligation to maintain the infrastructure. And, these are things that need to get done. It's not a question. they need to get done. The initial plan, as Matt indicated, was much more aggressive. And I actually scaled it back. I talked to the engineers and saw what we could pull out and, prolong. So that's what we did. But yes, we do get complaints.
You'd also get complaints if the infrastructure wasn't fixed.
We would.
You came in. And I would just like to echo what Sam said about going forward with the zero interest loans.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion.
What are you going to make a motion on?
I move that the board approve option 2 rates for FY '26.
Okay, do we have a second on approving option 2? There's a second? Okay, any further discussion? Yes. Okay, so if we do option 2, everybody understands it's going to be about a 5% increase overall to the average 5/8 inch that he calls average here.
Yep.
It's going to go from 148 to 156. That's about $8, which is a little bit more than 5% for fiscal year 26. That's what we're talking about for fiscal year 26. It's about a 5% increase for that average residential user. Agree?
Yep.
$8 over 146.
So if we vote for this, then we're not coming back on the 24th, right?
No, we're done. Okay, so we've had a motion, a second. Any further discussion on Andrew's motion to approve option 2, which is what Mr. Cundiff is recommending. That's what I think the Carla and Tammy and Brian, the group, all recommended here that we do to try to keep the impact for the first year a little bit lower. It's going to be bigger the next year. So it's going to catch up next year, but the first year it would be lower.
But not substantial.
Everybody ready to vote? Okay, all in favor of option 2?
Great. Thank you.
All right, so we're done.
Great.
Okay.
No more model runs. All right. Thank you.
Well, Matt, seriously, as years go on, we understand it better, at least I do. I think everybody else probably does too. You just got to keep
Yep.
understanding how
And
this works.
getting this done earlier is great because like you said, 4 quarters of impact versus 3. So
Yep,
this
okay.
is
Thank
good.
you for
Yeah,
coming.
thank
in
you.
person. Thank you, Bill.
One question.
Sorry, Tim.
Wasn't brought. I just wanted to put a plug in for conservation. I mean, when you announce these things, you keep talking about the rates as structured for conservation and all that. There are 2 things that I worry about. I mean, one is, for the very low end user, the base charge is what dominates. And so there's really no incentive for conservation. You may remember a couple of years ago, I put out a spreadsheet that showed, what it would look like if you wanted to replace a toilet, which is usually the biggest consumer in the house and so on. And it just doesn't pay back in a lifetime. So it would be nice if we could look into, what programs are available from MWRA or elsewhere to encourage subsidized support conservation instead of just talking about it and saying, well, at the very high tiers, they're very high rates. Because most of us aren't in those tiers. And sort of the corollary to that in reference to Mr. Dennington's comment about, well, why not keep the base rate high? The base rate is a very large percentage of a very small user. And for example, I think my bill went from $27.64 a quarter to $50 a quarter because of the change in methodology and not having a minimum usage in the base rate.
So Tim, though residents are in tier 1 and tier 2, there's a lot of residents in tier 2, and there's a big difference between tier 1 and tier 2. And we have lowered the base charge tonight.
I acknowledge that.
Okay.
There is that one-time thing, but we're not doing anything for conservation. We're not going out and trying to get people to replace toilets with lower flow toilets or lower flow shower heads or use less for their lawns or anything like that. And there are EPA programs and there are other things that try and encourage that. We don't seem to address that at all. So I'm just making my sort of annual plea. That, can't we look into this and not just say the time we think about water is rates. And when we think about it, you know, we say that the rates encourage conservation. Okay, maybe they encourage conservation for the really big user. I don't see that at my level. That's my two cents.
I make a couple of comments, but that one, we did actually make a giant leap in that direction. Thanks to Mr. Butler some years ago when we dramatically increased the rates for the high volume users. And I think that, who knows exactly what impact that had, but that certainly was a major shift.
But the water usage has gone down a lot dramatically over the
Can I
years.
make a motion?
Yes.
I move the board enter into executive session per Mass General. Law,
Thank you,
Chapter
Tim.
30A, Section 21, and not return to open session to discuss police chief contract negotiations, exemption 2, as the chair to determine an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's position.
Second.
All in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call vote. It's Al. Marguerite.